Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here with commentary editor Conn Carroll. And Conn, the Republicans still have not really selected their speaker. Speaker elections, they'll be held in January, but they haven't really coalesced around leader Kevin McCarthy yet. Give us the lay of the land where that
Sure. So they did hold elections a week after the rest of the nation elections. They held lead elections, and McCarthy got 188 votes, which was more than enough than to beat his opponent. But the problem is that when he goes to actually become speaker in January, he needs a majority of the House. So he needs 218 votes. So he needs to find 30 more votes. And so a lot of the people that are not giving him those votes, those last 30, have a set of rules changes that they want the House to adopt that McCarthy and some moderates in the House are against. Now, kind of the biggest one that for the moderates they say is their deal breaker is called a motion to vacate, which basically gives any person in the House the power to go to the floor and basically call for a new speaker's election. And that's the one that the moderates say is their deal breaker. But there's a lot of other reforms that the House Freedom Caucus is asking for that are very reasonable. The House actually hasn't had an open amendment process since 2016 on any legislation. I mean, we think about Congress as a peaceful place where we elect people, they go debate bills, they vote on amendments, but that hasn't been happening in the House of Representatives for going on 6 years now. So what the House Freedom Caucus wants is say, hey, we want to have a process where if 10% of the House Republicans say that they want a vote on an amendment, that means leadership has to give them an amendment and a debate on the floor, which sounds reasonable to me. All they're asking for is debate time and voting on the House floor. That's what the House of Representatives is for. So it seems like there should be enough medium ground here where McCarthy can give in to some of these demands and get the 30 votes he needs to get to 218.
The House Freedom Caucus has demanded really strenuously that motion to vacate the chair, which allows the whole body of the House to vote to remove the speaker. Do you think that if McCarthy were to agree to the rest of those demands, which also include putting conservatives into positions of leadership on committees, making changes to the steering committee, that sort of inside baseball thing that would give conservatives more influence, do you think that if everything else was met except for that motion to vacate, the House Freedom Caucus could support him, or is that motion to vacate a deal breaker for them too if it's not in the rules package?
I think they would take the rest of it, right? So, some of the other things that they're looking for is right now the House Republicans are kind of run by a steering committee which rewards basically loyal to McCarthy and fundraising ability. And for a lot of conservatives, they say, look, that's unfair. That takes away voices of our constituents. We want more representation of more rural members on that committee. And I think that's a very reasonable request to have to kind of democratize the House Republican Conference. And I think if they were to get that kind of more power sharing, that McCarthy would get the votes he needs to become speaker.
And finally, the Twitter files have been taking up a lot of oxygen in conservative circles. The White House is sort of trying to stay away from anything that is bringing back the conversation back to the Hunter Biden laptop. But you wrote this week, or the Examiner wrote this week, about how the White House sort of views the Twitter situation, Twitter's role in the world. So that was really interesting.
I mean, on the one hand, you have a lot of Democrats freaking out. You have, Ben Collins over at MSNBC, who's literally said democracy is going to be over because Elon Musk took over Twitter because of all the disinformation. But yet somehow we had an election. Democrats actually did surprisingly well. The sky hasn't fallen, and Twitter still exists. And that really is more kind of the White House Biden view. And the Biden White House, not necessarily Biden himself, but people within the Biden White House think, Twitter is really only good for two things. One is getting other journalists to echo their message, and number two is getting activists to pressure those journalists to get them on the right page so they're echoing the right message. I think that actually is pretty much exactly what Twitter is for, right? It's not something that the mass majority of Americans are on, but it is something that people like you and me spend too much time on. It's kind of a journalistic echo chamber, and you can drive messages, you can coordinate messages, you can create narratives in that environment. And Elon Musk taking over Twitter does kind of threaten that, but the White House realizes that there's still a lot more they can do on Twitter for performing those two functions, and it's just not the end of the world that Elon's taken over.
Well, Conn, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more reporting from Conn and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.